We are on the seventh lesson in our series in the book of James, the wise Christian in a world gone mad. James wrote this letter to help Jewish Christians in AD 48, who many of have been dispersed out of Jerusalem. We see that God wants these believers and us to practice wisdom in a world that doesn't always appreciate Christians. Last time, we discussed James 3, 1 through 12. In it, we are taught that when we speak, we always teach something. So we need to be conscious of what we say because it reflects on us, our God, and His church. And we want to be careful how we say it. We want to avoid being arrogant, boastful, or disrespectful. It not only reflects poorly on our message, it reflects on us too. It shows everyone that we are just as worldly as everyone else. I recently watched an interview with Belinda Carlisle, who was formerly lead singer with the all-girl band The Go-Go's. She went on to have a successful solo career and eventually dropped off the music scene. She had a lingering drug problem until she got married, but in her interview, she admitted that she missed her former lifestyle, saying it was fun. Though she was glad to be free of drugs, and she's supposed to say it's bad, but she admitted she missed her former lifestyle. Then she went on to talk about her search for meaning. She's doing yoga, raising a gay son, and follows the teaching of the Dalai Lama. She really didn't like the book The Secret that much because it had a lot of philosophy she tried before. She just needed something more. I remember saying after watching this, how sad. If only she knew Jesus. But then I had another thought. She probably rejected Christianity because she's been exposed to caricatures and negative portrayals for so long, she thinks she knows what it is already and doesn't see it as a solution. Then I wondered, but how many Christians know the difference? How many even see the difference between it and any other philosophy in the world? I believe this is what James is about to address. Let's read in James chapter 3, starting in verse 13. And it reads, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, of the devil. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You want something, but don't get it. You kill and covet, but you cannot have what you want. You quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures." In verse 13, James asks, "Who is wise and understanding among you?" Then he answers his own question with a practical application. It is very similar to a statement, "I'll show you my faith by what I do," in chapter 2, verse 18. In other words, the person who thinks they are wise and have understanding, it should be evident in what they do, just like the person who says they have faith. James does this because he is challenging the notion that wisdom is about power, wealth, or influence. If you remember in chapter 1, James sets up this letter challenging this idea. And he continues this concern here, as we will see. True wisdom isn't measured by worldly standards. In fact, true wisdom is marked by a humble, godly lifestyle. How does this wisdom contrast with worldly wisdom? When you are humble, you tend to be at peace or content. On the other hand, the worldly person is full of bitter envy and selfish ambition. They are not at peace or content, nor do they truly value them. They have no interest in doing good deeds without an ulterior motive. What is bitter envy and selfish ambition then? Well, envy is the state of being dissatisfied with what you have because you want what someone else has. And selfish ambition is orienting your life around what you want, even over what anyone else wants, including God. So where does James say this kind of wisdom originates? Well, it's earthly, it's unspiritual, and it's of the devil. And the natural fruit from this lifestyle is disorder and every evil practice. Now, I have to say this, because I'm surprised that some Christians don't make this distinction very often. Beware of people who promote disorder or evil, such as sexual sin or lawlessness. However, true wisdom looks very different. Those who have true wisdom demonstrate purity, peace, consideration, submissiveness, mercy, impartiality, and sincerity. What do all these things mean? Well, wise people care about other people. And they do good because it's good, not for some selfish agenda. They truly want what's best for everyone, and they seek for all things to be as they ought to be, not to be what they want. They don't give special attention to people whom the world says we should favor. In fact, they often care about people whom the world would sniff at. They seek peace over agendas. They are humble and give people the benefit of the doubt. They listen to people and try to judge fairly without partiality. And what is the result of this way of life? Well, it promotes peace and abundant righteousness. Where does this type of wisdom come from then? Well, verse 17 reads, "But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere." Well, this wisdom is straight from heaven, or God. Remember what James says near the beginning of this letter in chapter 1, verses 16 to 17? James says, "Don't be deceived, my dear brothers. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows." He warns us not to be deceived. Every good and perfect gift is from above, from the God who doesn't change. As we move on to chapter 4, verses 1 through 3, we learn the devastating effects worldly wisdom can have on the church. So, what are those effects? Fights and quarrels among us. This unrest is really a battle of hidden, unmet desires. Instead of being honest about them, some people let these affect their relationships. Some of us are motivated by selfish ambition and envy. People like this don't value prayer unless it gets them what they want. When they come to God, they aren't interested in forgiveness. Rather, they expect God to satisfy these desires. As a result, they shouldn't expect anything from God. You see, this is very similar to the double-minded person in chapter 1, verse 7. Actually, starting in verse 6. But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That man should not think he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all he does. This person is very similar to this person that's being described in this verse here in chapter 1. When this type of person wants something, they are not trusting God for his will, but trying to find satisfaction any way they can, making them unstable. Like trying to grow olives from fig trees or mixing fresh water and salt water together. You can't be a worldly Christian. You're just worldly. So how does this affect us today? Well, there are a lot of causes in our culture. Some of them sound very good. There are plenty of ways to meet all sorts of needs. There are all sorts of popular philosophies that promise prosperity and freedom. As the song Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics says, everyone's looking for something. However, the whole world knows something is wrong, but disagree how things ought to be. Some say there is no way things ought to be, it just is. Yet, their complaints betray their philosophy. They want something better, as if there is something better. But wise Christians should know better. We know that things are not the way they ought to be because we all have rebelled against our sovereign God who made all things. We know that the only hope this world has is reconciliation with God. So we seek peace as people forgiven through Christ, and we see people and our own lives from God's perspective. So, do not be deceived. True wisdom is from above, so choose it.